this is a 5-alarm fire. You drop what you do, you get on it right away, because we all know, even if it's not a big problem, they grow, right? And it's not like problems aren't like wine. They don't get better with age. They get worse.
Diana, we have another special guest with us this week.
One of my favorites, Chris Walsh.
Chris runs one of the biggest and most influential DMS companies in the U.S. and beyond. Chris is the president and acting CEO of the Reynolds and Reynolds Company. Chris, welcome.
Great to see both of you again. Diana, I haven't seen you for a while, so it's always great to see your smiling face.
Well, Chris, I love the story of how we met. Do you remember a few years ago?
I remember it very well.
Story. So Automotive News invited us to a dinner at NADA. And Jamie, I think you were the one that invited us, actually. And somebody was like, that's Chris Walsh from Reynolds and Reynolds. I'm like, that's Chris Walsh. And Chris was by the bar. And there was a door. And Chris is a very tall man. Like, he's like, Chris, what are you, 6 foot something?
6'5".
6'5". Okay. So I'm 5'3". I block the door. I go block. And I go, I know you don't know me, Chris. My name is Diana Lee from Constellation. And he's looking at me like I'm crazy. I go, I just want to tell you, you have to do a demo with me, and you can't pass by this door unless you actually say you're going to do it. I have some amazing technology that you have to see. And Chris, you were so nice to me. I know I was acting crazy, but you were like, okay. And I gave you my card, and I said, I'm going to call you. Don't ignore my email, and don't ignore my call. And you said, okay. And you know what? You didn't ignore me. You literally took the meeting the very next day with your product people. And I have to tell you, I thought that was one of the nicest things ever anybody's done since I launched Constellation. All the future automotive news events that I was asked to go to, I actually talked to everybody, and I said, make sure I sit right next to Chris Walsh. And we got to spend more time together. So
well, I remember, well, first of all, those are very nice things for you to say. And it's been a real pleasure getting to know you, throughout the past few years. That's what's awesome about this industry, is like you meet people and maybe there's an opportunity to partner, maybe there's not, but there's always an opportunity to learn from other people and their perspective on things and how they're helping move the industry forward. I love that. And I will say, one of the automotive news events I remember being at, I saw you and I said, oh, Diane, we're not sitting together. And you said, oh, okay, hold on a second. So she went to the table and she switched the name cards with someone else so that we could sit together. And that was when I really saw the spirit that is Diana Lee, the I will not be denied what I want to accomplish in life, which is how she got to be where she is. Like, you also have a great life story, I think, that I'm always impressed by when we're around each other. And I remember you telling me how you got here and the things that you've overcome to get to where you are. It's one of the best stories in automotive. And there's hundreds of great stories.
Oh, thank you so much, Chris. Thank you, because you're an icon to all of us. So coming from you, it means everything to me.
Wherever you are in the U.S., you're seeing the high gasoline prices. They tend to rise like a rocket and kind of fall like a feather. But new vehicle demand seems to be holding up pretty well. Chris, what are you seeing out there, and what are you hearing from dealers?
I still think, depending on the OEM, there are still inventory issues out there that dealers are dealing with. I think that customers are continuing to focus, and the ones that are good and getting smarter with used cars, both in the acquisition and the merchandising, of used vehicles, how you market your vehicles, your used vehicles. I think people are getting smarter about that. So it feels like, a little bit of, from a used car perspective, back to, the basics. How can we better leverage technology, in used cars to be more efficient and be more effective. So I do see some dealers, being a little bit more than usual conscious of costs and what they're going to invest in, what they're not going to invest in. Kind of a resurgence of how can I trim down my tech stack that may potentially reduce my overall, capital expenditures, but still get the same things done that I want to get done before. So keep the right people, get them to do more with us, and overall, and decrease my spend. So I'm seeing, a lot of those, kinds of things. Certainly AI is driving, a desire to look at staffing, and how can we staff differently, more effectively. You've got a camp where people are looking at things like AI and saying, I think it can reduce staffing needs. You've got another camp that looks at it and says, not so much reducing staffing requirements, just kind of reskilling or repurposing people in different parts of the organization that might drive different value or higher value than what they were doing before.
You have Spark AI and you have Rey, sort of the AI assistant. What are the roles of those two names? How do they work together? And what's the takeaway for dealers with that?
Yeah, so we started really looking hard at AI several years ago. And to us, the way that you needed to start with AI is you needed to start with the data, right? The AI tools are only as good as the data that they're pulling from. So if you have data in your service applications, that's a little different than data in accounting, that's different than data in F&I and sales, so on and so forth. It's potentially going to cause more damage than it's going to do good, particularly if you're relying on it to communicate with customers. So to us, the first step was to consolidate, all that data into what we call Spark, which is our unified data layer. So all the data resides, in Spark, and it all gets cleansed in Spark, whether it's, NCOA, change of address, whether it's understanding what email, people use multiple emails, what email is the best email to communicate with customers on, what vehicles they own, their history, their transaction history. So combining all of that within Spark into one unified customer record. So when you look at a customer, you have a 365-degree view of that customer. You see everything about the customer, and it's constantly kept updated. So that was, for us, that was step one. Step two was we moved into the generative side of AI. So think about like ChatGPT. We're all familiar with ChatGPT and I'm sure use it in a variety of different ways. Copilot is another one that I use Copilot quite a bit to try to be better, things like email. So moved into that side of it and just, asking questions and getting responses back, right? So I think of that as like an intern. Right? You think if you hire an intern, you ask them to do things or her to do things, they come back with, the response based on what you ask them to do. So it's a little bit like that. We went from there and rapidly moved into the agentic side, of things. And we're in that, phase now, heavily in that phase now. So, obviously I think we all know what agentic means, but it's getting software to actually perform tasks for you like a human being might have performed before. There may or may not be governance over that, depending on what you want, how you want to run AI within your organization. I mean, this is true across, all industries. When I think about, are you going to allow AI to just do things, or is there going to be a human being that kind of manages agents, so to speak? So we're in that phase now. We call it Rey, is our agentic assistant, and it does things from complex reporting, certainly answering questions, giving guidance, giving an opinion, connecting you to our technical support center. So if you're having some sort of a problem, you can leverage Rey to get connected to our support resources. So to have a better kind of communication path to connect to someone, and also, to get, whether it's a problem or get a question answer, whatever it happens to be. I mean, we feel like we've been the gold standard in customer support for a lot of years. And we think this is an evolution of that. And it's a way for us to actually streamline that even further and make our consumer experience, even better than it is today, which is already, really strong.
It sounds like it's mostly used as an assistant to give maybe information or guidance to the employee rather than going out and doing it. Like maybe tell me what I should be looking for at auction, not go buy these cars for me at auction.
Obviously, what everybody's in now is some sort of an evolution. And these tools, as they're implemented in an organization, is like a framework, right? So the way it works and is used at, Diana Lee BMW might be different than the way it's used at Jamie Butter's Chevrolet. So just because you may just use it differently, you may have a different degree of different types of people that are leveraging it. You may have a different philosophy about how you want to leverage AI, but it will go out and perform pretty complex tasks for you. And I think what's going to happen next is I think you're going to see what I kind of refer to as cognitive software. So software that is going to actually go and do things. And the software actually has, and our IT people try to explain this to me, and I can only get so much of it before my very basic college education shows and I get lost in it. But software that actually has memory, all the records that reside in the software actually contain memory. And the software starts to look for signals, from consumers. So example would be, to use Diana, with Diana's a consumer, we sold her a car. She opened up an email. She opened up that email. That's a signal, to the software to perform something big that I don't know what the email is or what it was asking her to do, but she clearly showed some level of interest. So the software is going to do something. I think the opposite of that might be a lack of a signal, right? So Diana's under warranty, but we have not seen her in over a year with her vehicle in service. So that signal or lack of a signal tells the software we should go do something to get Diana to come back in, for service. So I think that's the next evolution, and we're pretty far down the road with all of this. And I will say, I know you're aware of Amplify, Jamie, our annual event. This will be our fourth event this year, where we will unveil a lot of new products, a lot of new, so it's new products. It's understanding a little bit more about what we have today, how you could use those things better. So it's a educational summit as well as, kind of an informational summit. So we'll talk about our new CRM. We'll talk about AI. We'll talk about what we're doing in fixed ops. Those are probably the big three. And then there'll be lots of other things, sprinkled throughout that. And that's in Southern California. And so we're really excited about it. It's our fourth year. Attendance continues to grow. There's clearly an appetite for, events like this. And it's great for us to learn from customers, influencers, OEMs, a variety of different people that come there on just how we're doing, what we can do differently, how our products are being adopted, et cetera.
I have something. I think you've done an incredible job supporting the reputation of Reynolds. I will say that every conversation I've ever had with you was always, your goal was always to improve relationships with dealers. How's that going now?
I mean, we continue. I think it's one of those things that if you think about the relationships that you have with your customers, I mean, I think you're never really there, right? You always you want to get better, but every time you feel like you've reached, where you want to be, I feel like you should reach higher. You should raise, the bar. And, I started my career in customer support, and I had a woman I worked for back then, and she was really influential on my development as a 23-year-old, new person in a professional company. And I really learned the value of the relationship that you have with your customers and how valuable that relationship can be, and also how detrimental it can be if it's not, where it should be, where you're not adding value, to the relationship. So I think, our customers it's the center of our universe. Everything we do is to help our customers be successful. And if all 6,000 people wake up every day and think, my job is to help our customers be successful, no matter what you do, even if you don't interact directly with customers, you can still have an impact on a customer's success or on how, they view us, how valuable they think we are, to their business. So it's something that's really, really important to me. Are we perfect? We're not perfect. I don't know that anyone really is perfect when they think about their relationships with their customers. But I think the important thing for me is that we strive to be perfect. It's the way we're going to continue, to behave, certainly as long as I'm in the role that I'm in, or even if I'm in a role that I have something to say about it. It's the way, we'll continue. And that's true for, our retailers. It's true for OEMs. I think it's also true for third parties, right? I mean, we live in this massive ecosystem that we're all trying to do the same thing, which is we want the industry to be successful. We want the industry to move forward. And we want dealers to be successful. We want the franchise model to be successful. We want OEMs to be successful. Third parties have, a place in this ecosystem. There's a lot of third parties out there. And even if we have a product like that, their product's better. Or we don't even have a product that does what they do. And it's such an entrepreneurial industry that there's always people coming out with new things, which is really exciting, for me. So I think the relationships with all of those entities are really important.
I feel like your actions are your words, Chris, because I remember a time that a dealer was really mad and he told me about Reynolds and I said, let me text Chris. And I was really shocked because I put you on a text with the dealer that you did not even know out of 6,000 dealers. You literally text back in 5 seconds and said, let's have a conversation. And I was so impressed by that, Chris, I have to say, because I know how busy you are. I know how many people need your time, that you could drop everything and text. That meant everything to that man. And I was so happy because I
remember that the guy, he's in California, right?
Exactly. The guy.
Yeah, I remember.
And I was, I was just thinking, well, maybe he'll text back, but you've texted back immediately. So I was very, very impressed.
And every now and then we get situations where, we've got an upset customer for one reason, or another. And what I always try to tell people is that, if you've got a customer who's upset, I don't know what you're doing at that moment in time, outside of maybe you've got some kind of family emergency, like the email, it can wait. The Zoom call, the internal Zoom call, it can wait. The conference call you got to jump on or the in-person, it can all wait. This is a 5-alarm fire. You drop what you do, you get on it right away, because we all know, even if it's not a big problem, they grow, right? And it's not like problems aren't like wine. They don't get better with age. They get worse, and they get blown up and sometimes out of proportion. So the best thing you can do is get on it right away, do your best to fix it, find a way to come up with common ground to solve the problem. There's always common ground to solve the problem, but I don't know how you would not do it any other way. Like, I don't know. That doesn't make sense for me to not do that.
Chris, I think a lot of dealers have some concerns about the FTC after it sent out, dozens of letters warning of potentially illegal, advertising and pricing practices. How do you look at that issue, and what can Reynolds and Reynolds do to help dealers, make sure they're compliant?
We view compliance as something that's critically important for, over 10 years, so there's lots of different ways we help dealers address, compliance. Our digital retailing tools, when a consumer goes into a digital retailing tool, our digital retailing tool is Goobagoo. When they go into Goobagoo and they get a price and then they transition into a brick and mortar, part of the sales process, and they go in a dealership and they get a price, it's the same price. The calculation engine is the same, throughout that digital retailing process. We'll separate the different prices that are associated and taxes and fees that are associated to be more, transparent to the consumer. Or with our DocuPad product, everything is digitized, right? So you've got digital signatures. When you missed a document, when a customer didn't initial something, that you're presenting 100% of your products to 100% of your customers 100% of the time. So we've had situations where a demographic might say, I didn't get asked if I wanted to buy gap insurance, or I didn't get asked if I wanted to buy a vehicle protection product. Why wasn't that option presented to me? And that's happened, lots of times to lots of different dealers. This can prevent that from happening. How many times do you walk into an F&I office and you look at the F&I manager's desk and you see a car deal there that's got Jamie Butter's name on it. It's got his address. It's got his driver's license. Maybe it has his social security number on it, and it's sitting on your desk. That's a violation. We can digitize that entire, deal jacket. From a documents perspective, our law library of forms, we spend an enormous amount of money every month making sure that our, like as an example, our retail installment contract is compliant with all the entities that it needs to be compliant with. I mean, it's very expensive to do, but I think it gives our customers, peace of mind to know that if I'm using this document, I'm not going to have, any issues. We started in the documents business, we started a compliance team. So they will go into a dealer. They will say, hey, if you'd like, give me all your forms and I will have our legal team analyze all your from a retail installment contract down to an odometer statement, everything. We will analyze it and we will tell you where you are compliant, where you're not compliant, in what way are you not compliant? In other words, what entity are you not compliant with? And we'll provide that as a service. Now we're doing it selfishly because we want you to adopt our forms because we know that they are going to be compliant. So those are some of the things, that we do. Obviously, we can't control the ad that a dealer puts in, a newspaper or in any kind of, print ad or in a digital ad. We can't control what price they put, out there or how they behave in the showroom. But I think we can do lots of other things to help them be compliant in lots of other ways.
Diana, Chris is explaining, the business forms. And one thing I didn't know, and I bet you didn't know, Reynolds and Reynolds has been in this business for 160 years. It was 1866 when they started printing standardized business forms to help, businesses, standardize their operations. And with the advent of the automobile and auto retail, of course, they grew into that business. And then, of course, the way we handle documents and data has completely changed over the last 60 years or so. And Reynolds has evolved with it. It just kind of blew my mind how far back it went. And of course, you just continue to evolve the way you operate. And I think you really make the good point that you can have these forms and actually have them be able to check themselves. Just like, I don't know, I use DocuSign with companies when I'm borrowing a car or something, and you never miss an initial. You never miss where you're supposed to initial. It won't let you submit the form until you've filled it out. And I'm sure, your stuff works the same way.
Yeah, and it's another example. You just made me think about it. One of our customers, I can't remember which one it was, came to us. They said, okay, when you've got a consumer going through the F&I process, if we have not run an OFAC on them, I want the deal to stop. I do not want the F&I manager to be able to go any further. I also want it to know, based on the deal, based on the car, based on maybe the captive that you're going through financing on, I want it to automatically pre-build the forms library that we actually need, our legacy, I guess is interesting to me. I went into a while back, I had a customer say, you're one of the legacy DMSs. And I was like, well, I don't know what that means, being a legacy, DMS. If you mean that we were the first company to fully focus on automotive, yes, we're a legacy company. We're the first to focus on providing a standardized way for General Motors dealers to report to General Motors. We were the first one to do that. The first DMS, the first CRM. I think we're leading the way, in AI. So there's a lot of firsts that we have done. And to go back to the ChatGPT thing, I went in and I asked ChatGPT, since we have registered corporations in the United States, how many corporations exist today that are over 100 years old? And it's like 1,000.
Wow.
So it's not that many. And a lot of them are not technology companies. You've got like Eli Lilly's of the world that have been around for, a very, very, long time. For us not to just survive, but to thrive for that amount of time, I think is a testament to our people, I think to our technology, to our love of the industry, to the knowledge we've acquired over so many decades of being into it, the ups and downs, that we've seen. But, we're by no means resting on the things we've accomplished in the past. We are driving forward quickly, strongly, and investing a lot of money in being even more innovative than we've been ever before, because we think technology is going to evolve so quickly. It's going to play such a major part in the success of our customers and the industry that, we want to be a big part of that.
Well, I find it very interesting right now, especially because AI is moving at such speed. And obviously, Chris, that AI doesn't work unless there's a lot of data involved. It's recently happened. I mean, I think there are lawsuits that are happening right now. And this actually came up in a conversation just this week alone, where basically I think the dealer feels like it's their data. The OEMs feel like it's their data, and vendors feel like it's their data. So in your opinion, who owns this data? Because I think there are some, and I think it's completely wrong. And I'll say it even on a podcast. To me, as a vendor, it should never be our data. I just don't believe it should be our data. It's not our data. But how do you feel about the fight of the data right now as, this is all happening with AI?
Yeah, well, we believe it is the dealer's data. We believe the dealer owns the data, which is, I will say, being transparent, 10 years ago, that probably wasn't the way we felt. I wasn't in the position that I'm in. We do feel it's the dealer's data. We give a dealer the ability to take the data that they have, whatever set of data that is, through what we call dealer secured automated reporting, take that data, and you can move that data from endpoint A to endpoint B, whatever those endpoints happen to be, and you can do that. We will help you facilitate that. So in other words, we will make sure when you're moving the data from A to B that it's encrypted. We will make sure that when it's at rest, it is encrypted. When it moves back, that it's also encrypted. So we're doing that today. We've been doing that for several years now, but we do believe it is the dealer's data, and it's our job to help them better utilize that data.
That's great.
I want to ask about a different kind of technology. We hear a lot from automakers, especially like Hyundai and Tesla, about humanoid robots. You guys at Reynolds, you have a robot called Relo that delivers parts to the technician at the service bay. That seems pretty cool. Does it have a good payoff or ROI? Does the dealer buy the bot, or is it like a subscription?
There is a monthly subscription that goes along with it that allows us to maintain it, to update it. We're continually looking at its newer technology. So, we're always looking at, okay, we put one in and a dealer says, hey, it doesn't do this. It should do this, or it does this, but it should do it a different way. That allows us to update, the robots. It's going well. I think it's something that dealers are trying to figure out how we adopt it. But if you start thinking, we all want technicians to be in their bays turning wrenches. If your effective labor rate is $125 an hour, which is probably about an average, which means your cost is about $35 an hour. So there's about $90 an hour in there of gross profit. So that means that every minute a technician is not turning a wrench is costing you around $1 to $1.50. So start doing the math, right? I do 100 ROs. I'm talking about $1,500 in lost labor, productivity. So the idea is, how do we keep, the assembly line moving so that technicians, are turning wrenches, and being productive? I think the other side of that, which is, a little bit tougher to quantify, is if you're doing that, you're doing something to improve that consumer going from, making the online service reservation to actually paying for the work and driving away, with their vehicle. If we can be quicker at doing that, better at doing that, more efficient, doing all the things we want to do in the service lane to make sure we capture all the opportunities to serve that customer, whether it's what they came in for or things they didn't come in for. Maybe there was something, an R&D, a recommended not done from their last visit they forgot about. Remind them of that. Maybe there's a warranty or a recall that's out there. Make sure we do all those things. But if we can do that more efficiently, does that not provide a better consumer experience? If it provides a better consumer experience, does it not keep them in brand for future, fixed operations opportunities? Does it keep them in brand for buying their next vehicle, from that dealer? I mean, I certainly, think it does. So it's going really well. We're really happy with it. When people come by our NADA booth, it's invariably people want to stop and stare at the robot. Throughout the world, I mean, it's happening. I had lunch with a guy from Amazon the other day, and he gave me, I don't remember the number, but the stat was there's X number of robots kind of in the United States performing lots of things. Amazon has at least as many robots in the United States as everybody else in the United States has. Like the way they've embraced robotics, in that organization is kind of next level. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to grow in that space. And I think it's another example, an opportunity for us to show, that we are, an innovative company and are doing things that nobody else is doing.
Dealers right now in the economy, are there things that they could be doing better right now? Because I think like the more dealers I speak to, the more I hear, their desire to understand their P&L more than ever right now. Everybody, I feel like, is cutting back. Even though I think people are still selling vehicles, what I'm hearing is the margins are definitely going lower and lower. Are you hearing the same thing? And what can dealers do right now?
I mean, I am hearing the same thing. So, I mean, it goes back to the, kind of looking at their tech stack as one example of ways that they're looking at, how can I look at my costs? How can I, do the things I need to do, maybe with, not less technology, but less technology providers, and, lean on each one a little bit more. I'm seeing a lot of that. I'm seeing from an AI perspective, I'm seeing a lot of dealers really think about, how do I embrace AI? I don't think you should be thinking about, let's go, I want to go get AI for service, or I want to go get AI for sales. I think you should be thinking about what workflows exist that I think I can get better at, and how can AI help me get better. I think it's definitely a kind of a crawl, walk, run approach that I'm seeing what I would deem to be the smart dealers kind of really sit down and take a look at. We had a customer in our innovation center, and they brought in 8 people, and they're a current customer, and they just wanted to see all the new things that we have available. We do this quite a bit with customers in our innovation center. As I sat down, there was a woman sitting next to me, and I asked her what she did for the dealership, and her answer was, I'm an AI analyst. And I think it's the first time I've had someone in our innovation center where their title was AI analyst. And so I think dealers are looking at, how can I staff, to better deploy AI? I mean, we're looking at the same things internally at Reynolds. Like, how can we better leverage, AI within the Reynolds organization to be more efficient, to be more effective, certainly to drive margin. But I think there's, opportunities to be more operationally efficient. So I think, that at the end of the day is what dealers are looking at. How can I be more operationally efficient? How can I leverage tools to do things like move my accounting office or my front office away from such a posting intensive department into more of a cash flow and expense management, organization. So why do we have to manually post, car deals and repair orders and stock in vehicles like we traditionally have done? Like we changed all that, a while ago, so getting everyone to adopt that is kind of where we are now. Start thinking about your organization differently, and how the way you've always done things is not the way you can do things going forward. There's a better way of doing things that I think will provide, operational and financial benefits, to you.
There's a lot of talk about whether a recession is coming.
Oh.
Do you think it is?
I don't know. I mean, I've thought it was, but, inflation doesn't seem to be, super high right now. People seem to have somewhat adjusted to the price of gas. It's just become a little bit of the new normal. It has come down some. The unanswered question is what happens, politically, and what happens in the Middle East. I think that's going to determine, what happens there. I try to stay out of politics as much as I possibly can. It's so polarizing, but we've got the greatest economy in the world. We've got everything going for us, but, I do worry a little bit about it, but there's also, I have no impact on what happens with, in the Middle East, or what happens with, I can't influence that. All I can do is try to help our customers be more successful than they are, and help enable them to run their businesses better, and leave the rest of it to the politicians.
Well, that's probably as good a spot to end it as any. Chris, thanks so much for joining us. Chris Walsh is President and Acting CEO of the Reynolds and Reynolds Company. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a great conversation.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure, and it's wonderful to see both of you again. So take care, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you, Chris. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.